I guess like it's just so important that it's treated with a lot of legitimacy and a lot of respect in its own rights rather than being that additional add-on. I think the only like because I know that California they have their whole rule that your district can like petition enough, and if you get enough signatures, then you can demand that your district adds a like a student seat that's non-voting. And I know there's that. So I think that really, regardless of if it's that or not, it would be helpful if there was some more legitimacy added towards why it's important. Because I don't think that the fundamental legitimacy of student votes should be a debate anymore, and that can help move people forward as well as just make
Senate will return to order. The Secretary will call the roll.
Billig, Braun, Brown, Carlisle, Cleveland, Conway, Darneal, Das, Dingra, Dozier, Erickson, Fortunato, Frocht, Gildon, Hasagawa, Hawkins, Hobbs, Holy, Honeyford, Hunt, Kaiser, King, Kuderer, Leas, Lovelet, McCune, Mullet, Mazzal, Wen, Nobles, Patton, Peterson, Randall, Rivers, Robinson, Rolfus, Saldana, Solomon, Chesler, Sheldon, Short, Stanford, Vandaway, Wagoner, Warnick, Wellman, Wilson C., Wilson J., Wilson L.
Today's honor guard is composed of Lieutenant Matt Failer, Sergeant Kelly Howes, Sergeant Michael McGee, Trooper Dean Gallinger, and Trooper Brandon Tobel. They will now present the colors. The Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Emma Decker, who is the niece of Sarah Bannister, Deputy Secretary of the Senate.
United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Today's prayer will be led by Reverend John Rosenberg, who is the retired pastor of the Lutheran Church of the Good Shepherd.
Good morning. I'm speaking to you from Tumwater, Washington, part of the historic lands of the Stay-Chass people of the Squaxin Island tribe. Please pray with me as you're able. Holy One, we know you in an infinite variety of ways. By whatever name we call you, you are the one in whom we live and move and have our being. In these turbulent times, we give you thanks for this new year and the challenges and opportunities it offers to serve you and the people of our state. At this critical time in our history, we humbly ask your blessing upon the members of this Senate and upon our elected leaders as they take their oaths of office and begin their high calling of leading and governing their fellow citizens. Protect them and their families as they carry out their tasks. Give them wisdom and courage in the face of immense challenges, a spirit of cooperation despite their deep differences, and trust in your divine guidance as they work together for the common good of all the people and the lands and waters of our state and the life which they sustain. When the path ahead is unclear, remind us that throughout the ages, in times even more tumultuous than our own, your prophets and holy ones have shown us what is good. Yet you require nothing more of us, but nothing less than to do justice, to show compassion for each other, and to walk humbly with you, the source and ending of all things. Amen.
for a point of personal privilege and extend to you my deeply welcoming to me to this august body. I'm deeply grateful. You have been warm and generous and gracious, and I thank you for that. I have so much to learn from each and every one of you, and I look forward to it. I'm also grateful, as I know all of you are, to the staff for all the work that they have accomplished getting us to this point as we now proceed to operate under absolutely unprecedented in 131 years of our state's great history, a new context, a new set of procedures. The watchword for our days ahead must be patience. Patience with one another, patience with ourselves, patience with the time and effort that will be required to get past the hiccups and the bumps in the road, which are inevitable. I know that you will extend that patience to one another and to staff, and I will to you at every turn, I promise you. And with that, I thank you. Journal of the day, the Secretary will read.
Journal of the Senate, State of Washington, 67th.
Last line.
Day 2.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. For our part, we look forward to working with you. Welcome to the Senate family. It's good to have you up there. Mr. President, I move that the reading of the journal be dispensed with, that the journal of the previous day's business be approved.
Senator Elias has moved that the reading of the journal be dispensed with and the journal of the previous day's business be approved. Hearing no objections, so ordered. Senator Elias.
Mr. President, I move that the Senate now advance to the fifth order of business.
Senator Elias has moved that the Senate advance to the fifth order of business. Hearing no objections, so ordered. Fifth order, first reading of bills, introductions, and referrals.
State of day. Refer to the Committee on State Government and Elections.
Referrals be referred to the committees as designated, with the exception of Senate Bill 5185, which should instead be referred to the Committee on Law and Justice.
Senator Elias has moved that the measures on today's introductions and referrals be referred to the committees as designated, with the exception of Senate Bill 5185, which should instead be referred to the Committee on Law and Justice. Hearing no objection, so ordered. Senator Elias.
Mr. President, I move that the Senate now be at ease, subject to call the President for the purpose of caucus.
Senator Elias has moved that the Senate be at ease, subject to the call of the President for purpose of caucus. Senator Short.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would ask the same thing of the Republican.
Senator Hasagawa.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Democratic caucus will be convening as soon as we adjourn from the floor.
Hearing no objection to Senator Braun. Hearing no objection, so ordered. For the information of members, just to remind you, please turn off your Zoom camera feed, but do not exit the Zoom program. Turn off the Zoom camera feed, but do not turn off the program. You will join your caucus via Teams. The Senate is at ease, subject to the call of the President. Senate will be in order. Senator Elias.
Mr. President, I move that
Senator Elias has moved that the Senate advance to the sixth order of business. Hearing no Senate Concurrent Resolution 8402. The Secretary will read.
59, 2064, 2065, 2066, 2069, 2070.
Amendment at the desk. Amendment.
On page 2, line 11, after
Last
that.
line.
Sir.
Move the amendment.
Yes, I approve the.
04. Remarks. Senator Dozier.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I think we all have a duty as an elected official, and that's being the voice of the people that put us in this position. And it's extremely important that we carry that voice over to Olympia. The reason why we've entered this amendment is because the industries that have been hurt hardest through this COVID right now are the restaurant industry, the fitness industry, and the entertainment industry. When they were shut down, many of these businesses began to fail. They had a glimmer of hope over the summer. And over the summer, then, some of them regained a little bit of their business back. The big blow came when the second shutdown happened. And because of that, we've got a lot of people unemployed again. We need to get these businesses open. Mr. President, I'd like to share a little story from some of the people that I've talked to, and this is very important. A lot of this is indicative of all of these businesses. But this couple that retired from their businesses, that bought a restaurant back when they were in their 50s, now they're in their early 60s, they expanded to a second restaurant in November. These people live on the west side. Their home is in Puyallup, and their restaurants are in Maple Valley. Both of them had retired from their jobs, thought they would have a long life together in the restaurant business that they had started. They lost the second restaurant 2 months after they opened it when they were closed down. They were being sued by the company that owned the building, eventually piling up tens of thousands of dollars in debt. They were forced to sell that restaurant. They tried to make it on their first restaurant with takeout. In October was the first month that they had profited, a 3% profit. We move into the second shutdown in November. After the 4 weeks ended and the governor extended the shutdown for 3 more weeks, Cindy, who is the wife of Randy, had to go to the emergency room with a heart rate speeding out the top because of the fact that they were going to lose their first business. It took 2 shocks to get her back to life and get her heart back going again. This is the same story that I hear a lot. She had texted me before I got on the floor here and said, last night's windstorm now destroyed our tents. We can't even have outdoor dining. This is a story that I hear not only in my district, but across the state. This one is has particular meaning to me because Cindy is my sister. And I hear this very often. We need to get these businesses back open. Thank you, Mr. President.
Further remarks, I do want to remind the members to please click the Request to Speak button in your FAR voting system, and to remind you all that it will reset after each speaker, so you must re-push it after each speaker. Senator Elias.
Thank you, Mr. President. I really appreciate the comments from our new colleague. There is no question that COVID-19 has taken so much from so many in our state. It brings me back to the experiences of my own family. In 2007, we had to close our family business. So I know the difficult days that Washingtonians have faced, those tough conversations around the kitchen table, wondering if there is going to be a tomorrow and what that tomorrow is going to look like. So I certainly send my thoughts and best regards to Senator Dozier's sister and hope that things do improve. Reluctantly, this amendment doesn't help us solve that problem, though, Mr. President. The underlying resolution is focused on extending a number of emergency proclamations that are really critical to our COVID recovery and also to helping the state begin to grow out of the spot we're in. And so the language of the resolution would make these proclamations that we have before us contingent on a decision around phase 2. And while we have a difference of opinion on exactly when we should move to phase 2, I do understand that the State Government Committee is going to hear legislation next week around the phases and what recovery and the roadmap to recovery look like. So I think that there will be an appropriate opportunity for that dialogue. But when it comes to the emergency proclamations before us today, those that are focused on helping our frontline healthcare workers, those that are focused on providing more relief to families and businesses that are struggling, those that talk about in-person services with state government, I believe it makes sense to extend these proclamations for the duration of this emergency and have the conversation about the roadmap to recovery in that separate bill and that separate process. For that reason, I'm asking for a no on this amendment.
Senator Brown.
What this is really about, it's about the hardworking Washingtonians all across the state who are forced to stay home. It's about the business owners who are forced to have their businesses closed. All these people want to get back to work. There's a way to get them back to work safely. So many of us across the state received the pictures back from our districts that were heart-wrenching from the devastation that was caused by the windstorms last night. It was almost as if it was a death knell, another nail in the coffin of those restaurant owners. When this happened, I had restaurant owners calling me, grown men, unfortunately in tears, not worried so much about them, but worried about the hundreds of employees that they employed. Please, Mr. President, this is a great amendment. We need to adopt this here today.
Senator Fortunato has raised a point of inquiry.
I obviously must have hit the wrong button. I wanted to have a request to speak. So can I change it to a request to speak?
We're going to come back to you, Senator Fortunato. I'm trying my best. Press your button again. Senator Randall.
Thank you.
Senator Saldana is excused. Senator Fortunato.
Thank you, Matt. Is the devastation that we're seeing on some of these businesses. And I don't think that any Washingtonian wants to catch this virus. At some point in time, we have to make the decision to trust the people. So if I have a restaurant and that restaurant has a certain healthcare protocol in place, and I, as the consumer, go and I see that healthcare protocol, and I see that with confidence that will address my concerns, I'm going to go into that restaurant. By that same token, if I see a restaurant that does not have a healthcare protocol in place that I feel safe with, I'm simply not going to go. So at some point in time, we need to trust the people to make the right decision. This thing has been going on and on and on, and the devastation we've felt throughout the state and throughout our small businesses and businesses like a wine tasting business in my district, which could not have people come inside the building unless they served 3 food items. That was a proclamation by the governor with a guidance document. What serving 3 food items had to do with serving wine, I have no idea. But those are some of the things that these small businesses have been struggling with, where they go, they put up a tent, they put up heating units out there, and maybe one customer shows up and they're turning on the heat and they've got these extra expenses. And now, we're hearing that these tents are blowing away, so they have the additional damage of the tents. So we at some point in time, again, I'm going to close with, we have to be able to trust the people to make the right decision and get government out of the way and return some of these businesses to profitability. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, or Mr. President.
Further remarks?
I appreciate you being. It's good to see you here today, and thank you for presiding. Good luck. I want to rise in support of this amendment. I think we all want things to be done safely, and I think the communities who have been most impacted by the recent orders have shown us they can do that. In fact, the more that we keep people from being able to be out and about and enjoy each other's company in public places, the more they're going to do it in their homes, Mr. President. I think we've seen that. People want to gather together, and I think the work that our restaurants have done, I can say that I have always felt very confident in the accommodations that they provided in a safe manner. And it's really, although we're looking at the proclamations in this concurrent resolution, Mr. President, we support the proclamations. The proclamations aren't the problem. It's just, it's really making sure that we can continue to address things as they evolve. I think we've done that throughout this entire pandemic, and really think that the urgency that the previous speakers have shared really needs us to make this an emergent situation. And I think the amendment is well timed. I would support it, and I would ask for a roll call.
Senator Short has requested a roll call on the amendment. Do 1/6 of the members sustain the button on your far voting system? Voting system. Dengra.
Sometimes it gets very confusing for people to follow along on what is the actual amendment and what is behind the proclamation that we're trying to pass. What we are voting on today are a set of proclamations, an amendment to a set of proclamations about extending it, right? But this is not about opening small businesses. This isn't about a lot of the things that we have been discussing today. This is about making sure that the proclamations that had four-corner agreement that were renewed and agreed upon for the last 10 months continue to help the people of the state of Washington get through this pandemic. The things we're talking about is ensuring that survivors of domestic violence can go get a filing done for their protection order, making sure that that service is available to them for a lot longer than simply next week. It is about ensuring that we can have service of that protection order for longer than the next week. So these are critical things that there has been agreement on for the last 10 months. We have to make sure it's available past the next week. Thank you.
Further remarks, Senator Wagner.
Support of this amendment. I don't know if that changed anything. Amendment. I do not disagree that there are good proclamations in the underlying bill that we've agreed to. And those good proclamations, I get music too. Those underlying proclamations are important, and we can address those as a legislature. But what the underlying bill also does is punts this authority to the governor. And I think that we are abdicating our role as legislators by not adopting this amendment and letting our people know that the end is in sight. Otherwise, this is a bill that says more of the same, more of the same. We know that about 3,000 at least restaurants alone have closed permanently during the pandemic. And last night, the people who are surviving and hanging on got another blow. I guess it's pun intended. The windstorm, I have dozens of pictures from my district of people who invested money so that they could safely serve their patrons and, more importantly, not let any more employees go. They're staying in business to help their employees. All of that investment was destroyed in a windstorm last night. I think we need to accept this amendment because it tells the people that the end is in sight and that we as legislators are executing our appropriate role. Thank you, Mr. President.
Further remarks, Senator Braun.
Thank you, Mr. President. Tough year to start out. Fortunately, you have lots of experience, so I have no doubt you'll guide us well. So, Mr. President, I rise in support of this amendment. It's been a tough year for our restaurants, for our fitness centers. We've all been in a storm over the last 10 or 11 months. But it's clear, Mr. President, that we're not all in the same size boats, that we all have challenges. But some folks have more challenges, and that certainly can be said for our restaurants and our fitness centers. And I think, Mr. President, that it's our responsibility to really listen to to them as they explain their challenges, to try to understand what they are doing in response. And then, Mr. President, I think we have a duty to act. And absolutely, as the majority floor leader said, this is not the ideal way to solve this problem. I couldn't agree more. There are better ways, but we have to take the ways that are open to us right now. And this is one of the few ways we have of really helping folks understand and hopefully taking action to relieve the challenges that are being experienced by our restaurateurs and fitness center owners and their employees around the state. You know, Mr. President, for the last 10 months, we have been very concerned and that not everyone in our state has been equally represented. And I don't question the goodwill of the governor or the executive branch as they attempt to deal with a very challenging situation. But I feel like we have a responsibility to bring that voice to Olympia. There's a perception in our state that these decisions are being made by folks that have a safe government salary, who have government health care benefits, who have a government pension, that have very little risk. Certainly they have health risk, but they don't have all the other risks that these folks are experiencing around the state. And we, Mr. President, we're an outlier. It's just the facts. 45 states today, you can go into a restaurant and have a meal. There are restrictions, as there will certainly be restrictions in our state if we're able to open up. On Friday, 2 of the 5 remaining will open up. We'll be one of only 3 states in the country that don't have in-person dining available. So we're clearly an outlier, Mr. President. We have an opportunity here to take action in a very safe way to get our restaurants back in business. Our restaurateurs have been working hard to make sure they can open safely. I trust them to do just that for the good of their employees, for the good of their customers. They believe they need to open right now if they are to save their businesses. And I think we should support them. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President, and welcome to this. Today, I'd like to talk to you about 3 things. I'd like to talk to you about consistency, equity, and fairness. You know, for far too long, Mr. President, these mandates have just resulted in the government picking which sectors of our economic industry were allowed to remain open to operate and which must close. We saw that lack of consistency very early on. As an example, I'll talk about the construction industry, where government-funded construction projects were allowed to continue while those funded by private industry were not allowed to continue. And then that just kept going, kept seeing case after case of this inequitable system of choosing. And then you can see it's clearly on display today, Mr. President, with when you walk into the big box stores and they're packed, they're doing business like crazy, which is great. I love it. But I have 7,000 square foot restaurant in Pierce County that can't serve a single person indoors. It's obviously inconsistent. It's obviously unfair, and it's resulted in inequitable outcomes for so many Washingtonians, Mr. President. You know, this morning I had a little dental emergency. I had to go to the dentist early this morning because I had a cap that fell off. So I had to go in and get it cemented back on. Whenever I went there, though, they had an amazing set of safety protocols. And they have these safety protocols. You know, I went in and they checked my temperature. I had to fill out paperwork. They asked me all kinds of questions. We wore masks. They were double masked, face shields, everything. But they had all of those safety protocols in place, and they were allowed to safely open because they were given a chance to try, Mr. President. They were given a chance to try. And I think it's certainly time that we take off the shackles of this inconsistent policy, remove these inequitable mandates, which result in unfair outcomes for so many Washingtonians. It's time to shake it off, give all Washingtonians a chance to be creative, to try, and to pursue the American dream, Mr. President. So, in the name of consistency, in the name of equity, and in the name of fairness, Mr. President, I encourage you to support this particular amendment. Thank you.
Senator Mazzal.
Mr. President, and again, welcome to the Senate chambers. I'm going to make 2 points here. The first one, I can remain less emotional, and that is that I think it's very important for us to realize that on a governance level, we were elected to represent the people. And for the last 9 months, we have not necessarily been allowed to do that. And so today, it is our voices that are speaking up to represent those people who have been suffering for the last 9 months without representation from us. I've got family and friends who are in the restaurant business. My family's in the food business, and we supply a bunch of those restaurants. But I have 2 nieces with multiple restaurants, one in Eastern Washington, one in Western Washington. And I've watched them scratch and crawl to try to stay in business. And one of them lost one of their restaurants. The other one, they're staying in business with takeout. But I've got a bunch of friends here in the district who I have to listen to and try to empathize with and try to explain that this too shall pass. And it's becoming incredibly difficult to remain optimistic for them as they just approached a holiday season and were unable to provide a Christmas for their kids. One of them was in our store the other day, and my daughter asked her, "How is it going?" And she broke down in tears and she said, "I don't think it's worth it." These people have reached the end of their ability to see hope. And if nothing else, today I hope that they can look at us and see that there is someone who understands their lack of optimism as they look at the state's egregious regulations and the impact it's had on their lives. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Frocht.
Understand the toll that this has taken. And I, as the chair of an economic recovery committee, a long-term economic recovery committee that we initiated over the spring and summer and fall, understand in particular the hospitality sector, the restaurants, the fitness centers that have been suffered and have had particular challenges due to the pandemic and the orders that the governor has taken. What I haven't heard today on the floor on this amendment is the public health case that I think people need to understand about where we are. This state was in one of the worst positions last spring in the entire country, maybe even in the entire world. The aggressive steps we took have put our state on a better track relative to almost of the other states in the country. We have the 5th lowest rate of cases of COVID certainly relative to states of our size in the country. Now, the order that's in question right now is the emergency order that Governor Inslee put forth in November 14th, which took basically the state back to phase 1 or phase 1.5. The amendment before us would take us directly to phase 2 without any explanation of whether or not case rates are low enough for us to proceed. So even though this underlying resolution doesn't deal with that question, it really deals with sort of routine and more mundane aspects of the emergency proclamations. The amendment before us would just say, without any consultation with the public health, on the public health question, that we should automatically go to phase 2. We have to remember that for many counties in the state, including in my county in King, where we had opened things up over the summer and fall, the order that the governor put into place in November was in response to the coming surge in coronavirus that we've seen around the country that is overrunning hospitals in Los Angeles and other places in California where case rates have skyrocketed. We haven't seen those cases here. I agree completely. Our restaurants, our business owners, they are doing their best to be responsible, but we also have to look at the science, and we also have to acknowledge that we are not in that position because of some of what we have taken. I don't believe the governor, I don't believe that any of us want these orders to extend any longer than they need to deal with the emergency. And we're going to be tracking that all along throughout this process as we move forward. However, if we adopt this amendment, we are simply saying everybody goes to phase 2, no matter what the situation is in a particular county. What if there's a huge outbreak that's going on in Yakima like there was back in June? Under this amendment, everything has to go right into phase 2, and nothing could be done to pull that back, and you might have more spread and more death. We have one of the lowest rates of death from this virus in the entire country relative to our sister states, and we started out in a terrible position. I think we should not vote for this amendment. I think we should continue to consult and work strongly with the governor to get the state back open safely, get our restaurants open safely, get schools open safely, get fitness centers open safely. I had good dialogue with the governor's team just recently about fitness centers, and they have opened up indoor fitness facilities to some degree in the most recent order. Let's continue that process and not ignore the public health situation that we're facing and try to get our state back on track in that way. And I would mention again, we're all aware of the damage, the situation that we're facing. And I think with the new federal relief that's coming, and also money that we have that has been appropriated, 150 million into the small business grant and loan fund for targeted industries, we're going to try to help. It's not everything that they would want and that businesses would want, but this is something that we have done and we need to keep working on it. But this amendment is not the right way to go. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Linda Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I listened to all of these, and I'm in Clark County, and for months I have been meeting for every Thursday morning with our restaurants. And I heard them as they went through every single process and every single phase and how they were trying to move forward and all that. And it got to the last point where before they closed it down again, or the governor closed it down again, at that point, they were trying to figure out how they could use a tent. So 3 sides, it took them 6 weeks before they could even get the answer for if they could use a tent or not. The thing is, this is not a regular economic downturn. The businesses are shut down because of the way the government has responded to an emergency. So this is all because of how the government did this, that they are at a loss, both mentally, physically, and monetarily. They have no business plan because that went out the door months and months ago. It doesn't matter what they do, and that's where their frustration lies. It doesn't matter how they can respond to any of this because it's taken out of their hands, and that's where the despair comes in. When you look at, I've made for months the case that when you look at where the cases are coming from, they are not coming from restaurants. There's less than 1% is coming from restaurants. I think we had 17 cases in all of the cases in Clark County that even pointed toward a restaurant. Less than that for fitness centers. Fitness centers have gone in and spent thousands of dollars to redo their entire HVAC systems because they prove HEPA filters, and they've proven that they work. There's things they can do, but they can't keep reinvesting their money in or even take loans because they have no way to pay them back. So it's been so frustrating to just see how hard they've been trying over the course of all these months to comply with what the government has done, and then we turn around and give them less than 24 hours to shut down again. And we're not advocating for just open up and walk around and do whatever. We are advocating for the same healthy plan that we have already in place. So mask up and wash your hands and use sanitizer and stay 6 feet away. And they're all willing to do that. In fact, so is our communities. They are there to do whatever they need to do to help these businesses get back. In fact, these businesses are our community. Some of the biggest restaurants down in my area have been community members and done for others for so long that we are trying to help them now, but we're running out of money. Everyone can't keep helping them because they don't know how to do it. There's no business plan and there's no way to fix it. So I would urge a yes on this resolution. Thank you. Or on this amendment.
So thank you, Mr. President. It is a delight. I wanted to make a couple of points that have already been made by my colleagues. There can be no doubt that the governor has as his first priority the health and safety of the citizens of his state. Likewise, there can be no doubt that the same exists for the legislature. We as the legislature have convened, and it is our responsibility to act. It is no longer the governor's responsibility to provide the mandates that, whether they're good or bad, this is now our responsibility. And I think that that's, as we look at the frustration that people see, to tell them, yeah, we can't do anything about it because the governor's the only one with any power. That doesn't sell in Peoria, and it certainly doesn't sell in Washington. So I share this with you because I think that's really, for me, what is at the heart of the battle today. The other piece is we haven't seen the data, and in fact, the media has expressed sincere frustration that the data hasn't been shared with them that is being used to make all of these life-changing decisions. So the idea that less than 1% of all cases in Washington come from the restaurants, well, at Halloween, we saw a serious bump in cases from people's homes. So you could make the case that restaurants are actually safer than the home environment. Why? Because they've spent thousands and thousands of dollars to be safer. It's not a good business model to harm your clientele. Finally, my son was a manager of a restaurant when COVID originally hit. And he reported to me that for 2 weeks prior to the actual shutdown, the governor's shutdown, he reported that people had only been trickling in. And what this tells me, Mr. President, is that people will take care of themselves in a way that they feel comfortable. If they don't want to go to a restaurant, they won't go to a restaurant because they don't feel safe for whatever reason. But there are those who understand the measures that have been taken, who understand the economic driver that the hospitality sector creates for our state, or is in our state. And they are ready to get back. I give to you the A Casino in my district with 5 restaurants, 5. Now they're doing a bang up business because they're the only show in town. They are the only place that people can go to eat out. And people are. And people are enjoying themselves there. And they have taken the same precautions that all the other restaurants have taken. And not one reported case for tens of thousands of people. So we know this can be done safely. To Senator Frock's point, absolutely, we have to be safe. I think that our restaurant sector, our hospitality sector has shown they are safe with the low numbers that they are returning. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Billig.
Thank you, Mr. President, and welcome. I, too, am frustrated by this pandemic and the impacts on businesses and families. My own business is going to end up being closed for over a year, completely closed for over a year because of this pandemic. And I am as eager as anyone to see us open up and want us to open our economy and our restaurants further as soon as it's safe to do so. But, Mr. President, I'm asking for a no on this amendment because it is conflating two different issues. The underlying measure is about extending common sense, bipartisan supported proclamations that help to ease regulation on child care providers, that help to make it easier for qualified pharmacy students to administer vaccines. It makes it easier for people to keep their job if they're a commercial driver's license by not having to do the extension in quite as timely manner. It's about protection orders for victims of domestic violence. That is the underlying measure that we are considering today. And then this amendment brings forward a different issue, which is what should be our reopening plan. Worthy of a discussion. There's a hearing next week on the bills. The majority floor leader said, I do think we should have that discussion, but we should vote no on this amendment so we can get to the underlying bill, the underlying resolution, and pass that so we help businesses to keep going that are open. One of the things in the underlying proclamation is to waive tax penalties. So we are going to make the tax penalty waiver, the CDL, commercial driver's license waiver, the child care regulation waiver. We're going to make all of that contingent on something else if we were to pass this amendment. Well, we shouldn't make those things contingent on anything. They are widely supported. I bet everybody in this body supports the proclamations. They've been extended many times by unanimous agreement of the bipartisan caucus leaders. So let's vote no on this amendment. Let's get to the underlying resolution so we can make sure that these proclamations are able to move forward and help the people that they've been helping for the last 10 months. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Patton.
To you from folks in the Spokane Valley. I know you have. Mr. President, I rise to speak in favor of Amendment number 4 from the good gentleman from the 16th District. You know, I remember leaving here March 11th and feeling that, you know, things would get back to normal soon. Well, here we are all this time, and I've thought many times in the 10 months, you know, there's 3 branches of government: the legislative, the executive, and the judicial. And we were continuing to defer to the executive, to a one-person rule, had great intentions. And we kept asking. I'm sure the good senator from the 3rd District got tired of me asking, when are we going to have a special session? When is the legislature going to get together and do what the legislature does during these special circumstances? And there was talk, well, we might have it here, we might have it later, and of course, we never did have it. And that is why you see, Mr. President, such pent-up anxiety and concern by people throughout the state, but certainly by members on this side of the aisle, to try to do something to open up the restaurants and fitness centers. As has been said, 1% or less of the cases are coming out of the restaurants. And I had a talk the other day, Mr. President, with the Hub, which is a fitness area in between Liberty Lake and the Spokane Valley that caters to school kids. And well, a few things are being opened up for sports. The team sports are not being opened up, and they're willing to adjust. They're willing to play 3-on-3 basketball than 5, and of course they haven't been opened up for the schools. And what does this do? You've got kids that want to do well in school so they can be on the sports team, and they're depressed. So we talk about public health, but what about the increase in suicides? What about the increase in counseling because of depression, anxiety, mental health issues, emotional health issues? We've got to balance it out. And there have been a number of people who have said that you know, the balance now is to open things up. we're finally getting to some of the schools opening up because of that reason and others. So I would just ask that we pass this amendment. I mean, but let's balance. There's 45 states, many of them controlled by folks from the other party, many of whom have had special sessions. Nevada, California, Oregon, they all had special sessions, all with governors from the other party, but we did not. We never have had a chance, so that's why we need to do something right now. I'd urge a yes vote.
Senator Wagner.
Thank you, Mr. Erickson.
Senators Sheldon and Erickson are excused.
Thank you, Mr. President.
If there are no, Senator Dozier, a roll call has been requested and sustained. The President reminds members to use the voting buttons in the FAR voting system. The vote is now open. Please vote. Please vote. Electronic voting is now closed. The Secretary will announce each member's vote.
Billig votes nay. Braun, yea. Conway, nay. Darnell, nay. Aye. Erickson, excused. Fortunato, aye. Gawa, nay. Hawkins, aye. Hunt, nay. Kaiser, nay. K. Lovelet, nay. McCune, absent. Wen, nay. Nobles, nay. Nay. Rivers, aye. Robinson, Solomon, nay. Schessler, aye. Shea. Vandewey, nay. Wagoner, aye. Wilson Clare, nay. Wilson Jeff, aye.
You cannot interrupt a roll call, Senator Wagner. Senator McCune. Does any member wish to change their vote? The vote is now locked. The Secretary will take the record.
Mr. President, there are 19 yea, 27 nay, 3 excused.
Adopted. Further amendments. Clerk will read.
Amendment 005 on page 2, beginning on line 13, after until, strike all material through 43.0.
Senator Short.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Amendment 05 has been moved for adoption.
Appreciate about our body here and across the rotunda is the ideas that we bring forward when legislation or resolutions are put forward to our chamber for a vote. And what this amendment does, Mr. President, is just asks, the body to consider, a shorter duration of time on the proclamations. It's not to upend anything. It's not that we don't support the proclamations, but what we really have, I think, Mr. President, is a duty to express the frustrations of the people we've heard, and frankly our own, at not having been involved for so many months in the process. And to do, and I realize we'll be discussing the underlying resolution, Mr. President, but to just simply say we're just going to do these until the end of the pandemic, instead of doing the give and take that we've done throughout this entire process, because as the virus unfolds and the different things that affect our state and the people in it, our voice or the things we need to do ebbs and flows with that, Mr. President. And I think so I offer this amendment because I think to do what the underlying resolution does really impedes our ability to take action as we need. And more importantly than that, Mr. President, it's what people see and the perception they have of what we're doing when we're here. And I think this is the first opportunity that we've had to think about the structure, not just the proclamations, but how the legislature's involved in that process, Mr. President. And so for that reason, right now, today, I would urge support for this. I think you would find a lot of people more amenable, and it shows that the legislature is going to roll up its sleeves and get to work and be a part of this process. So I'd urge support. Thank you.
Further remarks, Senator Elias.
And her approach on this, regretfully requesting a no on the amendment. The proclamations at question, many are really critical to continuing the COVID response. For example, exempting the information collected by contact tracers from public disclosure. So the public has assurances that the information they give is going to be confidential and will participate in contact tracing. That's critical to the pandemic response and should not end on January 27th. Similarly, there's language in one of the proclamations to allow pharmacy students who have graduated to get their licensure quickly, which they're going to be critical to the vaccine distribution. So we don't want that process to end on January 27th either. So the legislature always reserves the right to pass a new resolution to end some of these proclamations during our 2021 session. The governor can terminate these at any time, and the emergency itself could be terminated. So there are multiple ways to address these and to end them when it's time to end them. The legislature retains control over that. At this point in time, though, all the ones that are included do have bipartisan support and make sense to move our state forward. So asking for a no on the amendment.
Further remarks, Senator Wagner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I don't know why. It's about how you're doing it. And there are some great things in the underlying bill, things that are important to our people, some of them that I think should be extended indefinitely. And it's our job as legislators to represent our constituents and do that hard work by abdicating our role to one person till whenever he decides that the emergency is over. We are not representing our constituents. We just cut out a big piece of our responsibility and said that's no longer our job. I think that is not a good form of government, and I think by putting an end to the point, we at least give our constituents hope that at some point the legislature is going to get back to representing them as we should. I urge the support of the amendment. Thank you.
Senator Gildon.
You know, this body just last year passed Senate Bill 5260, almost unanimously, I think, with only 2 no votes in the whole process. And we passed that bill because it provides legislative oversight to executive emergency powers. It set the framework by which we operate our system of checks and balances. This body thought this was a good idea last year, and nothing has changed, Mr. President. It was a good idea back then, and it's still a good idea. You know, does it require a little extra time and effort? Sure. Is that our job? Absolutely. Absolutely. We owe that time and effort to our constituents. We thought it was a good idea last year. It's still a good idea. It enhances our system of checks and balances. And sometimes the easiest path forward is not the best path forward, Mr. President. Please support this particular amendment.
Further remarks? There are no further remarks. 005 by Senator Short. All those in favor will signify by saying aye or voting in the FAR voting system. Having failed to receive a constitutional majority, Senator Elias.
Senate Concurrent Resolution 8402 and request a roll call.
Senator Elias, I think you want to advance it to third.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. We're both new at this. Be advanced to third reading, second reading, consider the third, and the bill be placed on final passage.
Senator Elias has moved that Senate Concurrent Resolution 8402 be advanced to third reading, placed on final passage. Hearing no objections, so ordered. Senate Concurrent Resolution 8402 on third reading and final passage. Remarks? Senator Elias.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to begin by requesting a roll call since we don't always do those on concurrent resolutions. 1/6 of the members join in the request for a roll call. The resolution before us today, while we've had a lot of discussion about the governor's roadmap to recovery and the appropriate ways that the state can respond to the emergency, the resolution before us today just speaks to the limited set of emergency proclamations that have received bipartisan support and that I believe are vital to addressing the continuing pandemic and providing relief to the families and businesses in our state who need it. There's kind of four broad categories of proclamations included in this resolution. The first helps Washingtonians avoid in-person services and unnecessary gatherings to promote social distancing. The second category provides relief to struggling families and businesses, tax relief, utility assistance, other forms of relief and help. A third category provides support to our frontline healthcare workers and essential health services, particularly in the long-term care setting, which was so hard hit by the pandemic in the early phases. And then there are a number of measures, proclamations designed to protect public safety, particularly access to justice during the pandemic. Failing to extend these proclamations today will slow our pandemic response. We talked about the need to protect contact tracing and that confidential data information so that our public trusts our contact tracers and participates. That proclamation must be extended in order to accomplish that. Failing to extend these resolutions, these proclamations today would also disrupt our attempts to open the economy and reopen the economy. Proclamation 15, for example, suspends in-person requirements to renew driver's licenses, and Proclamation 51 suspends in-person requirements for homeowners association meetings. I think we can agree that neither the DOL nor homeowners meetings would be our first priority to reopen. We need to reopen schools. We need to reopen other institutions first. These proclamations enable that orderly reopening of our economy. Also, as we talk about providing help to families and businesses who are struggling, Proclamation 20 waives penalties and interest and some deadlines for business tax payments to the Department of Revenue so that businesses like Senator Dozier's relatives that are struggling right now don't have to worry about tax penalties and interest on top of the hardship that they are already facing. Proclamation 23 ensures that utility companies can provide payment relief to families who are struggling. And Proclamation 79 that's included ensures that Washingtonians who are receiving unemployment benefits when we get another round of federal stimulus checks can keep hold of those stimulus checks just like every other family in our state. Mr. President, our Constitution and our laws have given the governor important emergency powers, and he's exercised them judiciously in these cases to protect our public, to protect our state during this emergency. But the Constitution and the law give us the oversight responsibility to take a look at what the governor has done, and that is what we are doing here today. We are examining the work that he's done, we're examining the proclamations he's issued, and reaffirming that these measures included are responsible steps to help address the pandemic, reopen our economy, and support families and businesses that are struggling. But this is not the last time we will exercise our oversight responsibility. There are multiple pieces of legislation moving through the legislative process, and we will pass a responsible budget that will address the COVID-19 pandemic and the relief that families need. Today is just the first time we are talking about oversight and responsibility in this 2021 session. It won't be the last. I look forward to working with my colleagues to ensure that we keep our state moving in the right direction. Today's vote to extend these proclamations is a first step towards that goal. Asking for your support.
Senator Braun.
Resolution. And it's not because of the proclamation that it extends. As the former speaker said, these are proclamations that we have worked on together for nearly a year. They're proclamations that help our citizens in many ways, and I don't think there's any dispute about that. And there's no question that we should extend them. The question is, why do we need to extend them indefinitely? Why do we want to take the legislature out of the role of reviewing those as our first substantial act of the legislative session? It doesn't make sense. You know, Mr. President, we've had a lot of discussion in the last few days, frankly, before that, as we worked up to session on how we would conduct a legislative session with proper precautions to keep everyone safe and do it in a way that is transparent, that allows access to our citizens. And here we are, Mr. President, first act, we're done. Just do whatever you want, no more review required. And I don't say that I hope that I don't mean that in a mean way. I think we've fallen short. You know, our citizens, Mr. President, have high expectations for us, and they should. And I think in this case, we are letting them down. You know, this is a bill, a resolution rather, that we didn't know about a day ago. It was a surprise. You know, we offered a simple amendment that would said, okay, let's do this for 2 weeks. It would have given us a chance to talk about it, figure out what's the most efficient way to do this in a way that's bipartisan, that continues our work in good faith on these proclamations that help our citizens, and is transparent. So with regret, Mr. President, I have to ask that members don't support this resolution, that we come back to the drawing board. We find a way to work together in a bipartisan way that takes voices from around the state to get the best solution for the entire state. And we do it each time there's a proclamation. It's not a lot of work. We can handle it, and we can do it transparently and openly. I apologize for that, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Brown.
Thank you, Mr. President. And the reason is trias politica. It's the separation of powers. The intent of the separation of powers is to prevent the concentration of power and to promote for checks and balances. Article 2 of the Washington State Constitution created the legislative department. Article 3, the executive. Article 4, the judiciary. Mr. President, my constituents sent me here to be their voice, to argue on their behalf, to legislate for them. They did not send me here to sign the bottom of a blank check. They sent me here to be their voice. The legislature is in session. Let's do our job and let's legislate.
Senator Warnick.
Thank you for this resolution as well. You have heard during the debate today the emotion and the desperation from people that we represent, and you have heard that we've made promises. I have made multiple promises to my constituents that if I get back to Olympia, I'll be able to help in the recovery. This proclamation, this resolution, takes away the ability to do my job. Senator Lee has pointed out that some of the proclamations, they're very good for businesses, very good for families, and I support those. However, we are giving away our ability to help. And our state needs to recover in the next few months. The governor several times used the term "we" during his state address today. Well, this proclamation will take me away from that discussion. It's going to be just up to him under this proclamation, this resolution. I'm not used to this. This resolution will take me out of that process. I represent the constituents in Legislative District 13. We haven't been asked to be involved for the last 9 months. We have supported many of the proclamations, but I asked this body to put this resolution down and allow me to be a fully involved senator for my district. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Billig.
Thank you, Mr. President. Rising in support of the resolution. Surprise. Well, we do have new transparency rules because of our remote nature. So this bill, according to those rules, was known on Monday. But more than that, we as a Four Corners have worked to be able to extend these non-controversial proclamations, and the proclamations were extended until next Tuesday. That was by request of the minority leaders of the House and the Senate, which was fine. That was a reasonable request. But what that means, if we are going to not let these lapse, that we have to take action today so the House can take action on Friday, and we can make sure that we don't let these proclamations that you've heard everybody supports, that are actually good for our state in a bipartisan opinion, we've got to make sure they don't lapse. And so I just want to be clear that by voting against this proclamation, if it fails, that means that we lose, our small businesses lose the tax waiver. If this doesn't pass by Tuesday, it means that our child care regulations that we've helped to streamline during the pandemic means that those go away. It means that the commercial driver's license, truck drivers that we are helping during this pandemic to streamline, it means that that goes away. It means that the convenience of getting a protection order during the pandemic goes away. So I understand the frustration. Believe me, I am frustrated with this pandemic. I am frustrated with what it's meant to my business and to my family and to my community, my state, my country. But that's not what this proclamation is about. This is actually the opposite. This proclamation, or excuse me, this resolution is about making it easier for all of those people who have been impacted in such a negative way. Please vote yes. Thank you.
Senator Linda Wilson.
Of this resolution. So 8402 encompasses 26 separate and distinct gubernatorial proclamations issued by the governor over the course of the last 10 months. They range from child care to driver's licenses, from fuel taxes to college tuition. After 319 days since declaring this emergency, not one of these measures, which all carry the force of law, have been referred to a committee. Not one has received a legislative hearing, and not one has had any public input. Yet with one bill, or excuse me, concurrent resolution, because this isn't a bill that we're voting on, it's a concurrent resolution. With one two-page concurrent resolution, the majority has decided to extend over 26 separate policies indefinitely. How do we know that this is going to be extended indefinitely? Because our own military tells us that there are emergencies that have been in place for over 10 years. And currently, there's one that the governor has issued and it's active in June of 2013. That's 8 and 10 years. How do we know how long these are going to be put in place? We don't know. Is that the role of the legislature? Any legislature? After everything that we've been through over the course of this year, this is what we're doing for the first step today, right? To remove even the little a bit of input that we've had over the course of the 10 months. So what 8402 tells me is that, Mr. President, that it is the current majority has no interest in legislating anymore. They'd rather hand over all of the decision-making to one man in another branch. That may be just fine with some of the members on this floor in this room today, but that's not what my constituents elected me to do. I urge all of the members in this body to do their job. Vote no. Thank you.
Senator Fortunato.
You know, we've heard many of the concerns center around who is actually making this decision. So we are voting and we are giving this decision-making power now that we are in session after 10 months We are finally here. We are finally in session. My constituents have been asking me, please help us, please do something. And my response was, we can't, as your elected official, I am reduced to writing letters to Santa Claus. I write letters to the governor. I can't do anything until we're in session. Well, now we are in session. In May, way back in May, we called for a special session in order to address these exact issues, to have legislative input. So if I may, Mr. President, I'd like to reference state law and the resolution. So if I could read one paragraph.
Please proceed.
So the resolution refers to RCW 4306.06.10. And at the end of that RCW, it says the state of emergency shall cease to exist upon the issuance of a proclamation of the governor declaring its termination, provided that the governor must terminate said state of emergency proclamation when order has been restored in the area affected. And my contention has been since May that we are no longer in an emergency and the governor no longer has these emergency powers. We have the power. We can do this. And the first thing that we're doing is conceding that power back to the governor until he decides he doesn't want it anymore. That's the crux of this entire concurrent resolution. I have absolutely no problem whatsoever with the proclamations. I agree with many of them, if not all of them. Not the problem. The problem is who is going to make this decision. We are saying that we are ceding this back to the governor, and that's my problem, and that's why I will vote no. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Short.
Thank you, Mr. President. But, you know, I just wanted to echo the good gentleman from the 3rd District's comments. The proclamations and the things that they help are really critical. But, you know, you, Mr. President, you understand the legislative process. You understand that people can sit in a room, okay, maybe absent right now, but the normal process of gathering together to come up with a direction. You know, that can happen at any time, any way, ahead of any deadline. And I think over the years, I have seen time and time again where people have rolled up their sleeves and they've gotten their work done. We don't want to see these proclamations fail, Mr. President. I don't think that's the issue here. I wished that our 2 caucuses would have been as vigorously involved as apparently the Democratic caucuses were in trying to come up with a 4 corners way of proceeding. So the people who need these proclamations, Mr. President, would continue to have the help that they needed. And I think we proved that we could do that with nearly 100%. There were times that it wasn't, Mr. President, but we came together as a 4 corners to do that very job. And so I have faith that we can do that very job today, Mr. President. That's what we're all here to do. But to say that we're going to, take this and just not work on these things because we're just going to wait until the end of the pandemic and when the emergency is over, I think really minimizes our role and minimizes the confidence I have in us to sit down together and roll up our sleeves and do the work on behalf of the Washingtonians. I know we can do that. And to me, it's also just as important for my constituents and constituents across the state of Washington and all of our districts to show that we're taking our job and the role that we now have in legislative session, that we're just not going to give that away, Mr. President. And I think by extending that to the extent that is in this resolution really underscores that point. And it didn't have to be 2 weeks, Mr. President. I picked days. We could have gone later than that if it made sense, but the problem was we weren't involved in that. And I do appreciate the good work that all sides have done in the rules, getting to the point of operation in the chambers, and I'm proud of that work. We did a lot of work. We could do the same thing here, but regrettably, I'm going to be a no today.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise against Resolution 8402 today for a number of the said similar reasons spoke. I need to speak against this in order to preserve the good faith. I'm being a newly elected senator. I'm very excited to work with and not for my fellow colleagues. And along that matter, I feel at times that when I came to work, either I saw a fence or now I may feel that there's a handcuff on the legislative process. This is not what it was intended to be. To have extension of this without any sunset or a due date to end this really casts a dark shadow of hope that my constituents in the 19th district are looking for. And for that reason and many more, Mr. President, I will not be supporting Resolution 8402. Thank you, sir.
If there are no further remarks, the question before the Senate is final passage of Senate Concurrent Resolution 8402. The vote is now open. Please vote. Please vote now. Electronic voting is now closed. The Secretary will announce.
Braun, nay. Brown, nay. Aye. Darneal, aye. Doss, aye. Used. Fortunato, nay. Frocht, aye. Hawkins, nay. Hobbs, aye. Holy, Kaiser, aye. King, nay. Absent. McCune, absent. Mullet, Nobles, aye. Patton, nay. Peter, Robinson, aye. Rolfus, aye. Sheldon, excused. Short, nay. Warnick, nay. Wellman, aye. Nay. Wilson Linda, nay.
Senator Lovelit votes.
Wilson vote.
Votes aye.
Senator Wilson votes aye. How does Senator Holy vote? Senator Holy votes nay. How does Senator McCune vote? Senator McCune votes nay. Does any member wish to change their vote? The vote is now locked. The Secretary will take the record. Constitutional majority, Senate Concurrent Resolution 8402 passed. Senator Braun.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. President. So I just want to address an issue that came up on. You know, there was some talk and even I think an article about us taking Senate Bill 5114 to the, or trying to go to the ninth order today for immediate consideration of Senate Bill 5114. We decided that was not the best option. We did that because we were given some assurance that the good chair of state government would give that bill a hearing in the near term. And we think it's much better off if we can work in a bipartisan way, in good faith, to get our restaurants and gyms back open. I recognize that we had some debate today about this issue and we didn't agree, but I am hopeful that we can find a way to come together to get these enterprises safely opened in the near term. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Elias.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Elias has moved that the Senate adjourn until 12:30 p.m. on Thursday, January 14th, the fourth legislative day. Hearing no objection, so ordered.